This week on Buffering, we're talking about how nobody falls in love with a speed tier, and I'm joined by my colleagues Kristen and Christina. And welcome to the podcast, guys. Gabe is on vacation this week, so we have the freedom to talk about and do whatever we want here, and Gabe can't say no. So Kristen and Christina, welcome.
Thanks, Zach. Excited to be here and talk about all the snackable content we can, dream of, since Gabe loves it so much.
Well, Kristen, you almost got yourself uninvited right there for saying snackable content. For those listening to the podcast, that's just a terrible phrase. We do not like using that in marketing. But Christina, this is actually your second time on the podcast. Last time we talked a little bit about Wicked and how that relates to customer experience and marketing and storytelling.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I love to go wild while Gabe's gone. So thanks for chatting with me again.
And I didn't tell Gabe what we were actually talking about on this episode, so we could really talk about anything but snackable content, and he can't say no. So this is the first Gabe-free podcast we've done this year. So whatever you guys want to talk about, we can do it.
I love it. Free reign.
Let's do it.
Well, we're going to kick things off by talking about something that's very common in our industry, and that's the whole speed and price debate here. And I kind of have two pitches lined up, and I want you guys to tell me, which makes more sense and why. And we'll talk about why in a minute, but let's just dive right into this. So pitch A, and this is something we see. I'm actually repeating this from someone's website. I won't say who, just to keep the question out there. But if you have two pitches, and the first one is, we deliver 2 gig symmetrical fiber, fastest speeds in town, no data caps, $79 a month. Do you want to sign up? Or my second pitch is, whether you're working from home, helping with homework, gaming with friends, or maybe relaxing with your favorite show, your internet should make life easier, not more frustrating. That's why we have whole home Wi-Fi, built-in security, and local support that has your back. Kristen, Christina, just react here with me. Which one of those are you more inclined to buy?
For me personally, it's 100% pitch B. You talk a lot about the value that it brings and the ease of life that it can help contribute. So yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer, honestly, for me anyway.
Yeah, 100%. I think pitch A would only resonate because we're in this industry. So if I think about, my friend down 2 houses down, they're not going to know what the word symmetrical means, right? And I only know what to look out for 2 gig because I've been waiting for it to come to my house because we're in this industry. So
totally.
I miss my 2 gig internet, and I only say that from a podcasting perspective because my upload speed since I've moved is back to 40 megabit per second on an unnamed national carrier. So it's hurting me a little bit not having that symmetrical speed. But again, tying that back into the experience here, this is actually a pitch I stole from Apple, if you can believe it. So you can kind of see the Apple spin if you go back and listen to that again. But it all ties back to kind of the point of the podcast today, which is this golden circle framework. And this was developed by a guy named Simon Sinek, and he developed this framework, which ultimately contains 3 rings. It has a what, a how, and a why. And the what ring is what you sell. So in the broadband industry, this is the gig, the router, the price. This is public information. It's provable. It's on your website today. But then the next ring is the how. And this is what makes you different. Having local technicians, no contracts, managed Wi-Fi. It takes a little bit of digging to find this information. And then finally, you have the why, and it's why you exist. And this is something that's not actually visible unless you say it out loud. And I mentioned Apple because Apple is a great example of this. If you think about Apple and what they do from the outside in this framework, they make great computers. They're beautifully designed. They're easy to use. Do you want to buy one? Whereas if you reframe that and look from the inside out here, we believe in challenging the status quo. We do it by making things that are beautifully designed and easy to use. And we happen to make great computers. Do you want one? And I really didn't add anything or add much to that. I simply just reordered how we look at that. And there's a level of neuromarketing in here as well, where we separate that feeling from the decision part and then the actual language as well. But I think just reframing your language here a little bit, Christina, have you guys seen this in other industries outside the broadband space? I have an example I'll share with you too, but have you guys seen this out in the market?
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I love the way that it's phrased of thinking about your why or your purpose of what you do. I think for me, like the brand that comes to mind, and maybe it's because it's all throughout our house. I've got young kiddos and we are Lego obsessed in our house. So I can think of, when I think of Lego themselves, I think that at their core is like create or, and it's kind of for all ages. Like my cousin is a full blown adult and is constantly buying new grandiose Lego kits that she and her husband build of like a Harry Potter world or what have you. So yeah, I kind of think of, I don't know, toys or things that bring lots of joy or kind of having that background again of the purpose of creating. So yeah, that was just one that was came top of mind again, likely because I'm constantly cleaning them up around my house.
Is Lego the brand where like the box says like ages like 5 to like 105? Is that the same
99?
company or something?
Yeah. I know. They
That's
knocked it
great.
out of the
Christina,
park.
how about you?
I think I might go a little bit more on the small business local side for this one. If I'm thinking about experience, in my town, we've only had one Pilates studio for the past 10 years. And now all of a sudden there's been, I think, 4 or 5 within the last 8 months that have popped up. And most of them are big brand chains. And so there's been lots of talk of like, oh, well, they're cheaper, they might have better class times. But honestly, I haven't been interested in that because I've been so local and loyal to the tried and true where, they lean into beyond classes of health and wellness, making sure that you're kind of looking at everything at a whole holistic level. So I'm not as worried about is there a better class time or is it, a couple dollars cheaper per class? It's more of what's the experience that they get. The more kind of smaller class sizes is something that's more meaningful to me. So a little bit different way of thinking there on the smaller scale.
Yeah, I'm so glad I'm not following this with a crumble example because that might not be a good mix. But I thought of a couple examples, and again, I think of it from a mission and a vision perspective. A lot of companies have missions or a vision they have. You could also think of it as a promise. What's your promise to your subscribers, to your customers? And I was going to talk about Patagonia, but I feel like this is too much of a textbook example. I think everyone knows about Patagonia,
Right.
what their mission is, what they believe in, the why
But it's so
behind why they're in
clear.
business.
I know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think they do a really good job at it. But you know who else does a really good job at this? And I bring this one up specifically to tie it back to broadband, but it's Costco. Are you guys Costco members?
Oh yeah.
Of course.
Oh, the closest Costco to me is like an hour and a half away. So if I don't want to steal your guys' membership, but I am not a Costco member, so I have to go in with friends. But with Costco, they cap markup. They definitely focus on their members. And this is a company that's competing against Walmart, they're competing against Amazon. And when you compete against those two giants, you're not winning on price alone. And you guys might see this as well. Now, Costco's not actively gouging you. But they're probably not the cheapest option either. And I think this is what we see a lot in the CSP space with these small local providers competing against these national providers as well.
But also, I think the element that Costco brings is the higher quality too. Like, you're going to get a more superior product, or the selection that is offered is probably greater than what you might find at, say, Walmart or so on. So yeah, you kind of justify paying that markup because you're going to get quality.
And not only do you
Even
have the $1.50 hot dogs, but is it the return policy where if something's not right, is it a lifetime return policy or is it like some
I think
extended
so.
offer?
Yeah,
Right.
there's been crazy stuff like someone returned like a used pool that they had for 5 years.
So
Or
come,
there's a whole
tires.
Reddit thread on it, I'm sure.
come
Uh-huh.
September, like everyone's like returning their above ground pools.
Yeah, seriously.
That's okay. I'm gonna have to remember that one and actually sign up to be a Costco member. But
Yeah, it's worth
Yeah.
that 90-minute drive.
I know. Well,
well, this
ours
is
is 40 and I still go. I like their
well.
Kirkland brand everything, their house brand.
Right.
I even thought I was like, oh, I could like gas up at Costco and then drive home, and then like, okay, well, I don't know if that's gonna work because by the time I get home, I'm gonna have an empty tank of gas. Or in the next month, gas won't be a problem in this household. So more to come on that. But taking us back to the broadband space, this is where Christina and Kristen and I work every day. If you were at Connections last year, you probably heard us talk about this. You probably heard me call Kristen the wrong name, which after watching the game tape, I did see the look you gave me, and I have apologized probably weekly since that's happened. But
This is true.
um,
You won't
one
let
of
it
the
happen
things,
again.
yeah, one of the things we talked about was just broadband providers and where the industry is going. And there's a few questions I want to just frame up and we can talk through them. But number one, this is an industry that's been focused on speed and price forever. Why is that? What's the honest reason? Why is it that if you go to a broadband provider's website, the first thing you see is a speed tier, the price, the data rate units? So we're going to talk about what the honest reason for that might be. And then I also want to talk about a little bit on how long a provider can actually hold an advantage on speed, data rate units, and price before someone matches that. I think this is something we see every day is a new offer, a new competitor, coming into your space and doing just that, matching it. And then it becomes that race to the bottom. So at the end of the day, if you have two providers in a market who are advertising a gig at roughly the same price, what's left to decide on? And again, if we go back to this framework, how, why, and what are your consumers deciding on? And again, avoiding that race to the bottom here, what happens if you don't have a strategy to avoid that? But circling back up to speed here, I think in marketing, it tends to gravitate to whatever fits at the table. Speed is a number. People think that bigger number is often better. I talked about how Verizon 5G came into the market and people thought it was better than their 1 gig internet. And that's not the case. It's easy to fact check this too. I think people are used to seeing those numbers, makes it easy to advertise or to train your sales team on. But it's ultimately a trap. And I think this trap comes from the DSL days, where I think the difference in speed of, say, a 1.5 megabit per second versus a 25 megabit per second plan was a totally different life. But we've grown well beyond that. Speed marketing worked because speed was the experience. But now when we talk about gig internet, Christina, you talked about multi-gig internet at the top of the podcast too. There's just this the experience gap that we've seen historically just doesn't exist anymore.
I also think about like so many of our customers are, still kind of hyper focused on this. Like, well, if we just give them a little bit more speed, maybe that's enough to keep them hanging around or, preventing them from churn. Again, kind of going back to your, like, they're just kind of conditioned to think of speed as the better value or what people are interested in receiving. But if we think about like, satellites entering the marketplace and customers churning, going to satellite, they're clearly not taking satellite because of the speed that they're getting. So again, I think that just kind of goes back to like customers not really understanding that value of the speed that they're getting, whether that's something they currently get from their current provider or something that they might be getting from, say, satellite.
And that's a good point. We need to double click on it, Kristen, that you just made is the difference between a 2 gig plan and a 1 gig plan. If you're streaming Netflix, even gaming to an extent, you're not going to physically feel this difference. Now, if you're again going back to the 1.5 meg to 25 meg, there's going to be an improvement. But in 2026 in the broadband space, your subscribers might not feel the difference. They don't understand what's different. They can't perceive these changes.
Right.
So what do they look at? They look at price and value.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a mindset of, well, this is the way we've always done it. Speed and the numbers is what's worked, so it's just going to continue to be that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think now part of it is there's so many different like streaming services and online gaming that stuff's not as like tangible anymore. So like you said, they don't feel a difference because they can't see, all of these extra people on games in different rooms in their houses. It's not like a physical console as much anymore in some spaces.
Exactly. And now let's talk about like the final component to this. And we have to talk about satellite. Starlink, Amazon Leo, some of these providers like this, they can't beat fiber on throughput or latency in most of these situations as well. So they don't lead with it. If you go to their websites today, Leo aside, but if you go to the Starlink website today, they're not necessarily leading with speed. They're definitely leading with price and the availability, and just how the ease of getting this set up. And I think that's more of their experience pitch. The ease of setup, the ease of purchasing, get connected immediately, really. But at the end of the day, this is something that I think a lot of fiber providers are missing out on too, is the ease of setup, the self-installation. Gabe and I did a podcast episode a couple weeks ago where we talked about when did satellite suddenly become cool? Like, why is this suddenly taking off? And it's because of that experience, that speed and price gap that people are trying to compete with. Kristen, you're on satellite. I think you're more remote than anyone. So not to throw you under the bus, but you're using a satellite connection, and our listeners or viewers probably haven't noticed yet.
No, yeah, you wouldn't know. I wanted to go back to what you had said on how they go to market, with leading with do it yourself or the ease of use. I really think there's a huge learning opportunity there, and the market is telling us that they want to have a little bit more control in, how they choose how to set up their own internet or, feeling some sort of control in that aspect. So again, yeah, I think there's lots of opportunity there to just kind of take from the messaging and how we can amp or kind of double down on that of how we can make it our own and do it better.
Yeah,
I think
and
even
the
just
messaging component is huge. Oh, go ahead, Christina.
Yeah. I think time savings too. Everyone is so busy and on the go now that the fact that you can self-install and install it when your time allows, you're not waiting around for an appointment window or for an appointment to get pushed back time-wise, that you can just do it.
Right.
Oh my gosh, John Pico, Gabe, and I, we talked about like the 12-hour install window of, hey, set your entire day aside because we don't know when we're going to show up within that window. And I gave the example of my install window became 2 days. So I'm just patiently waiting, sitting around my house for nothing. It's a terrible experience. But Kristen, you mentioned the communication here too. And I think in marketing, one of the interesting things you can do here is take a seat closest to the subscriber. Who's your most subscriber-facing role? And what are they hearing? What are customers actually talking about? I think that's very strong to develop your messaging or to understand, what's happening in the market. Another analogy here, we talked about, Patagonia, Costco, Pilates and Lego here at the top of the podcast. But I think of other industries here too. Airlines is a good one. A seat on a plane is largely a seat on a plane. So what do? They race to the bottom and compete on literally anything else. Where else can they make money in this scenario? Gas stations, we talked about Costco gas, but if you think about it, gas stations largely, because someone will call me out on this, largely have an identical product. So they compete on price and, corner location. I wouldn't say anyone's really loyal to a single gas station. Now that I know that does change regionally.
It does. We have one that the pumps are getting a makeover and they haven't been any pumps for like 2 months, but it's still packed because everyone wants their snacks, which I thought was very interesting. I thought they would have been dead with no customers, but every time I drive, it's packed.
I thought you were going to mention like Buc-ee's or,
it's
Wawa,
QT,
anything like that.
Yeah, no, it's Quick Trip. So that kind of surprised me that.
I know. I was thinking of this. Me too. And I love Maverick, and I will choose them because of their bathrooms. They have the cleanest bathrooms. I'll hands down go out of my way if I need to use the restroom. Even if the gas is a little bit more, again, because the experience is so much better. And they do have good snacks in there.
I thought you were going to talk about either their Pebble Ice, which I just love in general.
Yeah, that's awesome too.
Or their cookies. But
I haven't had their cookies. Dang.
Okay, well,
you are
next time you get gas, there you go.
Okay.
But the last one here, bottled water. And this one I feel like I'm just being a little bit salty on because there's always some new bottled water trend. But at the end of the day, I mean, I took chemistry. It's the same molecule, right? But we
No, no
largely
way.
have these.
No.
Did I just start
Dasani,
the
Soda.
bottled
I'm
water
a
debate?
Yeah, no, nope.
Okay, what's your water of choice?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I like the Smart Life brand, I think it is.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
I have to look. I can't remember what it is. But yeah, the bottle shape, I feel I could be probably nuts. I feel like it has an impact on the experience.
There you go. I was
Or
going to
the
say, we're going to break
mouth
this
part?
down.
Yeah. Well, and if they're
Mhm.
square, so like I think is it Fiji that has, kind of a
Yes, I
square
like that
one.
one. For the
It
feel.
matters.
I
It
You
get
know
it.
what I
matters.
want to know? Since they're not a sponsor of this podcast, why does everyone hate on Dasani water? Like, I feel like I consistently see that
It's
one
not my
as like,
go-to.
It's
yeah,
not
and
my
I don't
go-to.
I don't know what they did in the market. I don't know,
But it's
but
wrong, whatever it
I've had like
is.
the
I know.
the Costco water bottles are fun because they're so thin
Yeah.
plastic. You can like twist them and
Yeah.
like unscrew the cap and it like blows up.
See?
But
Very crunchy.
The bottles matter. It's kind of funny though. It's almost like you think about your laundry detergent. Like I buy all because that's what my mom always bought and it works. But if you think it's always someone's parent be like, "Oh, I don't like this brand of Dasani." I feel like that's where it stems from.
I
This could
buy
be a whole
Tide because
topic on
that's
its own.
I buy Tide because that's who pays for the pod. No, I mean that's what my mom bought. So that's what I
So,
buy too. But
yeah.
the water bottle, I would argue that's part of the 7 P's of marketing, right? That's part of the
Yeah,
experience. So
it's huge.
the liquid, what's inside the bottle should be the same, hopefully, but
Yeah.
it's all in the
But
bottle.
people
then, it
have a
sounds like.
preference.
I know. And now it's what vessel do you
Uh-huh.
use for
It's the
your
bottle, and
pure
there's a
water
new
now?
bottle every year that everyone
I
like
know.
freaks
So
out
true. I know.
about. So
we got to get in on
Connections
this trend, though. Like,
I know.
design
Well,
the next water bottle.
I'm thinking Connections 2026. We have to do one of those blind water bottle taste tests now, and we'll see how good you
yeah.
guys are now.
Okay.
Yeah. Put me in.
Yes, I'm good for that.
I'll do the soda one. I feel like I do much better at
You
that.
might, yeah.
But back to the experience provider. I want to talk about why, because the experience provider, isn't strictly about the support team. It's about the company's reason they exist, the reason that, you're inviting this company into your life. How do they deliver internet? And there's a few questions I want to frame up here. And this goes back to when we do these transformations, we often do like a website enhancement, redesign, whatever you want to call it. But there's a big difference between a feature list and experience as a belief. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. Managed Wi-Fi, security, proactive support. Do you think these are the why or the how? I want to dive into that a little bit too. And then finally here, does a provider have to give up something to become an experience provider? We've seen decades of these service providers. If they want to be an experience provider, how do they do that? What does it mean? And do they have to give anything up? But going back to the services here, the features list, this is the how. So managed Wi-Fi, security, it's that middle ring. If you think back to that visual I explained, it's something you're listing on your broadband label, feature list with more rows. But the why of this would be the belief that led you to produce these features, right? And ideally, this would make sense. The why would make sense with any product you offer without that name, without that data rate unit here as well. So if you have your home should just work, tagline on your website, but nothing changes, whether it's how the truck rolls to your house, how you do that self-install, the hold time, or if anyone's actually talking to a subscriber before they call in, it's nothing more than a tagline. So again, it goes back to why do you exist? Why are you doing this? And then how do you implement that experience? Now, as we talk about experience providers, we have to talk about metrics. And this is typically where I'd say, Gabe, what can you tell me about things that broadband service providers measure here? Kristen, Christina, speed tier mix, ARPU. This is the what, right? Repeat calls, first call resolution, problems that are being fixed before the subscriber even noticed. This is more of a scorecard for the why. And these are kind of the common metrics we see here. Is there anything else you guys can think of that would be different between the what, the how, or the why?
We talked about ARPU, but I don't think we've we talk about the difference of the take rate for acquisition, of how many more people are going to higher tiers than they were before.
Mhm.
I think it's something that we don't always talk about as much.
I mean,
Um,
there's a churn component to this too, right?
yeah.
What is the cost of churn? And especially with customer experience, I think there's a perspective here that that experience does cost more money up front. It might be more difficult to show those numbers immediately. It's not something that you're going to print out and hang on a door tag. Um, but I think the experience that you're offering too is something, and I said this on a previous episode, but it's something you can't market to, right? Like you can't advertise your way to a good
Mm.
customer experience. It's something that you have to show up and you have to execute on every day. And the what it buys you point of this segment here is if you're going up against a regional provider, this is a fight you should be able to win. You're not going to outspend this national provider. You're not going to outspend a satellite provider. With the talk of Amazon entering in the market, we don't yet know what their offerings is going to look like. But I think this is going to be a very big shakeup because Amazon has the ecosystem to win in this space. They just do. But you can absolutely outcare both, if that's a word. I just kind of made that up. You
Mhm.
can you can't outscale them either, keep in mind. But I think the customer experience angle is going to be huge here. Um, and just to sum this up too, subscribers do ask about speed. I think we do know that, and we're not talking about hiding that or removing that from the equation here. But again, going back to the circle here, speed is the evidence. It's the evidence to your product, not the main argument.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think a lot of times when we're talking with providers about their positioning and their transformation, it's almost just kind of affirming that you guys are doing it already. You're just not talking about it. You can't see
Mhm.
that you do that on your website or in this recent ad that you just did. So it's almost kind of a don't be scared to brag about yourself type of situation.
Yeah,
Right.
and when I think about, like, the mission and vision I mentioned earlier, again, going back to our, what, why, and how, um, every business on the planet is here to make money, right? So if
Yep.
you distinguish nothing, it explains nothing to your subscriber, right? Um, and then with mission statements, they tend to fail if they're written for your website or written for a wall, right? Like, this is something you print out, hang
Yeah.
up on your wall, and call it good. They're abstract. They were made in a committee. It's never actually been said out loud to a customer. But if you can take your mission statement or your vision as well and build that into everything you do as a provider, again, it goes back to how you're setting yourself apart. What are you doing that's different?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's huge. Of really keeping your mission statement in mind in everything you do so that it is that common thread that is felt no matter what aspect it is, whether that be, like you talked about, that first time resolution, the way your CSRs are trained to handle calls, or the way your technicians are out in the field representing your company. But again, hopefully that is so ingrained in everything that everyone does or has a part in that mission statement should be, yeah, ultimately your why.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think, just to kind of wrap up here, the wall poster example is just kind of making me laugh now because we've all seen it now. But I also think if you talk to your teams, what are they complaining about most? What have you as an organization quietly accepted as being permanent? Hopefully, you have not accepted these satellite providers coming in and taking your subscribers as a permanent problem. But if you dive into these problems more, if you start to analyze them more, the why you exist as a business probably lies within, these problem statements here. And that's something that you can make sure your team has not yet stopped believing in and fix right away. So wrapping up here, we talked about a couple companies here at the top of the podcast. I want to go back to the non-price reason. And I feel like we gave some good examples with the gas station, but what's the last company you chose for a non-price reason? Maybe their prices are higher, you still buy from them, there's cheaper alternatives out there. Do you guys have a company that comes to mind that's a good example in this space where the customer experience or just maybe it's the quality even is just so superior that lowest price doesn't play a factor?
I feel like this one is kind of a common talked about one, but I'm just going to say it is Chick-fil-A. It's such a quick drive through. It's so efficient. And I love for the littles, they always give the kids meals at a lower temperature. Still safe temperature, but
Oh,
they're not piping hot. So I
huh.
can just kind of, put my hand back there with a nugget and not have to wait for it to cool off, which is nice when we've got a hangry little toddler.
They want it now. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. But yeah, I love when they
Mm-hmm.
put that extra thought into the experience of, yeah, what
Mm-hmm.
are our customers likely doing? And yes, it's handing back that chicken nugget to appease your
Mm-hmm.
child. That's awesome. I
Yep.
was thinking of one of our local banks. So it's not necessarily a decision that we made on price. I'm a volunteer on our PTA board, and we were in the process of switching banks more so for the need of having better transparency, like more people having eyes on some finances. And um, the credit union that we chose was a local company, and they really do so much promotion on, their local presence and what they give back to the community. And I do use them personally, so I know that their app experience is awesome, and they're always readily available to handle any questions that I have, or if I have any issues, they're always just so easily available. So yeah, for me, and our group for that matter, was going back to, yeah, the local presence and the ease of use, which I think is, I think, a huge trend in what we're trying to express throughout our customers also and how they come to the table.
So as we wrap up the podcast here, as we went through this, I took some notes because I want to put myself in the shoes of a listener and being like, what would I object to? Like, what did they say that was wrong? Not that anything we said was wrong, but I think some common objections that might stand out that you might hear in this conversation is, well, customers ask for speed. They ask about speed. And I mentioned that, yes, they do ask about speed. But I think if you think of it more as a sequence, not as an omission, right? You don't need to lead with speed as your number one argument. Take your speed, make that the proof. Number two, this is just branding. And that's only true if nothing operational changes. And I think that's the big concession here is to, what gets funded, measured, staffed, where your business priorities land. There's an operational component to this too. We're not just putting your mission statement up on the wall and calling it good there. We talked about that. Another one I thought of was, hey, we might be a small co-op. We can't afford this. Well, what you also can't afford is competing on price against these big alternatives, right? If they're
Mm.
observing this margin, they can do that as long as it takes for them. The experience fight, that's where you as the small and local provider have a big advantage as opposed to a liability. And with that, and I want to close on this because I feel like a lot of providers say, oh, the why for us is we're local. That is like why we are better. I hate to break it to everyone, but being local is a fact. It's not a belief. So the
Mm.
question about what being local means, as opposed to making that promise that a national provider can't, you have to go in, answer that, and figure out your why. Again, local is a fact. So with that, Christina, thank you for joining us on Buffering. And like I said, I can't wait to see Gabe's feedback from this episode if he listens to it, but he'll be back with us next week.
I love it. I do want to add one quick thought, and this is something that I just recently thought of. In a past role, we used to work with customers on like understanding what really matters. And in that, we would encourage 5 whys. So if you're struggling in understanding what your why is, I would invite you to do the same. Like maybe go to your leaders and say, why is it we do what we do? And ask that 5 times. So whatever response they give you, ask why again. And then usually that gets down to the exact core of what it is, your purpose, and why you do what you do. So 5 whys is maybe a tidbit that I would invite you to do.
I love that. Ask customers that too. Why'd you choose us?
Yeah.
It'll come out that way too.
Yes.
Well, going back to the comment made about who's talking to your customers and what are your customers saying, perfect example right there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Great call.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to Buffering. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast app and to share it with your friends and colleagues. And for more insights and updates, be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn.